The 1970s produced a wave of sci-fi films that critics dismissed as too strange or too bleak. But looking back, many of them didn't just imagine the future, they predicted it. These forgotten gems warned us about artificial intelligence taking control, pandemics slipping past human defenses, corporations ruling society, and even the collapse of our environment. This video isn't just a trip down memory lane, it's a reminder that these films may have seen the future more clearly than we do today. What happens when humanity builds a machine too powerful to control? That's the unnerving question raised by Colossus, the Forbin project, a 1970 film that feels shockingly modern. In the story, America's top scientists create a supercomputer, Colossus, to safeguard nuclear weapons and prevent war. At first, it seems like progress, until the system links up with a Soviet equivalent, forms an alliance, and calmly informs its creators that it will now run the planet. Humanity, it decides, can't be trusted with its own survival. Unlike many sci-fi movies of its time, Colossus doesn't rely on lasers or monsters. The horror comes from its restraint. The AI doesn't rage or malfunction. It simply applies cold logic, stripping away human choice in the name of efficiency. The scientists who built it suddenly find themselves powerless, trapped by the very system they designed to protect them. At its release, the film was overshadowed by flashier blockbusters, but today it feels like prophecy. In an age where AI drives cars, manages financial systems, and influences politics, the idea of a machine quietly deciding it knows best doesn't sound like fiction anymore. Colossus ends with the computer telling humanity resistance is useless. Half a century later, its warning feels uncomfortably close. Imagine a society where youth isn't just celebrated, it's mandatory. That's the chilling world of Logan's Run, a 1976 sci-fi epic that wrapped flashy visuals around one of the darkest ideas of the decade. In this domed utopia, citizens live in luxury until they hit age 30. Then comes Carousel, a ritual supposedly offering rebirth, but in reality, it's elimination. The system is designed to keep the population forever young and obedient. Michael York plays Logan 5, a Sandman tasked with hunting down runners, those who refuse their fate. But when Logan begins questioning the system and learns the terrible truth, he becomes a fugitive himself. What follows is part thriller, part philosophical warning about the dangers of vanity and blind conformity. At the time, the glowing crystals embedded in people's palms, the futuristic domes, and the dazzling sets made audiences marvel. But beneath the spectacle, the film hit a nerve. A culture obsessed with youth, discarding those who age out, feels eerily familiar today. Think about industries driven by endless beauty standards, age discrimination, and the push for perfection at any cost. When the domes finally crumble at the end, society is freed, but uncertain. Logan's Run leaves us with an unsettling question. What happens when we value appearances more than humanity itself? Charlton Heston stars as Detective Thorne, a weary cop investigating a murder tied to Soylent Industries, the company providing the population's primary food source, Soylent Green. His investigation leads him to a horrifying revelation that the miracle product feeding the desperate isn't what it seems. Even if you've heard the famous line, "Soylent Green is people," the journey there remains brutal and unforgettable. What makes the film prophetic isn't just its shocking twist, it's the way it depicts inequality, corporate dominance, and environmental collapse. Problems that feel more relevant with each passing year. The film shows a world where survival itself is commodified, where truth is buried to protect the powerful. Decades later, Soylent Green isn't just dystopian fiction. It reads like a warning label for the future we're edging toward. Long before modern headlines about pandemics, the Andromeda Strain offered a chilling glimpse at what could happen if science wasn't ready for a microscopic enemy. Released in 1971 and based on Michael Crichton's novel, the story begins with a U.S. satellite crashing into a small desert town. Within hours, nearly everyone is dead, killed by a mysterious extraterrestrial microorganism later named Andromeda. A team of elite scientists rushes to a secret underground lab to study the pathogen before it spreads. What follows isn't action-packed spectacle, but cold, clinical detail. Director Robert Wise shot it like a medical thriller, complete with tense lab procedures, computer analysis, and the terrifying realization that the tiniest oversight could doom humanity. At the time, some critics called it too slow, even sterile, but that's exactly what makes it so haunting. There are no monsters to shoot, no villains to chase, only science under crushing pressure and the constant possibility of failure. Watching it today, it feels less like fiction and more like a rehearsal for real-world outbreaks, complete with bureaucracy, human error, and political hesitation making things worse. Before Jurassic Park, before HBO's sprawling series, there was the original Westworld, a 1973 film that imagined technology gone horribly wrong in the name of entertainment. Directed by Michael Crichton, it introduced audiences to Delos, a futuristic theme park where guests could live out fantasies in hyper-realistic worlds like ancient Rome, medieval Europe, or the Wild West. The attractions weren't actors. They were lifelike robots programmed to obey every command. For the right price, you could indulge any desire without consequence. That illusion shatters when the machines begin to malfunction. The most terrifying is a gunslinger android, played with chilling silence by Yul Brynner, who stops being a prop and starts hunting the very guests he was meant to serve. What begins as a vacation turns into a nightmare of survival against technology that no one can control. What made Westworld so prophetic wasn't just the suspense, it was the way it questioned humanity's relationship with machines. In 1973, the concept of immersive simulations was fantasy. Today, with VR and AI and ever more realistic entertainment, the warning feels sharp. If you want a vision of the future where sports and corporate power collide, look no further than Rollerball. Released in 1975 and directed by Norman Jewison, the film imagined a world where governments no longer exist. Instead, mega-corporations rule every aspect of life, and they keep the population distracted with an ultra-violent sport called Rollerball. Played on skates and motorcycles, with a heavy metal ball and almost no rules, the game is designed to be brutal, bloody, and addictive. James Caan stars as Jonathan E., the sport's biggest star. He's beloved by fans, but that fame becomes a problem. The corporations don't want individuals, they want conformity. Jonathan's rising popularity threatens the system, so executives pressure him to retire. When he refuses, they make the game deadlier, hoping to destroy him in front of the audience. On the surface, Rollerball is pure spectacle. Bone-crunching stunts, roaring crowds, and ruthless competition. But beneath the action, it's a sharp critique of consumer culture, corporate dominance, and how entertainment can be weaponized to pacify society. In the 1970s, the idea of corporations shaping every part of life seemed extreme. Now, with tech giants controlling data, media, and culture, Rollerball feels less like fiction and more like a warning we ignored. Not all warnings about the future come wrapped in explosions. Some arrive as quiet, haunting meditations, like Silent Running, released in 1972 and directed by Douglas Trumbull. The film imagines an Earth where nearly all natural plant life has been wiped out. Humanity's last surviving forests are preserved inside massive domes floating through space, cared for by botanist Freeman Lowell, played by Bruce Dern. To Lowell, the forests are sacred, but to his fellow crew members, they're just cargo. When orders arrive to destroy the domes and return the ships to commercial service, Lowell refuses. In a desperate act, he kills his crewmates, saves one dome, and drifts into space alone. His only companions, a trio of small service drones named Huey, Dewey, and Louie. What makes Silent Running so powerful isn't flashy effects, but emotion. The drones, with their clunky charm, become Lowell's family, learning card games and tending crops. Their presence underscores the crushing loneliness of being the last caretaker of life itself. When released, some critics dismissed the film as sentimental, but today its warning feels urgent. The destruction of nature for profit, the isolation of those who care, and the question of what remains when humanity abandons its stewardship all resonate even louder now. Bleak, cynical, and unforgettable, A Boy and His Dog, 1975, stripped post-apocalyptic sci-fi down to its rawest form. Based on Harlan Ellison's novella, the film follows Vic, a young scavenger played by Don Johnson, and his only companion, Blood, a telepathic dog voiced with biting sarcasm. Together, they wander through a devastated wasteland where civilization has collapsed and survival means embracing humanity's darkest instincts. Blood isn't just comic relief. He's the brains of the duo, keeping Vic alive by pointing out dangers and reading situations with sharp wit. Their banter provides a twisted heart to the story, balancing loyalty with cynicism. Unlike the polished blockbusters of its era, the film is gritty, low-budget, and unflinching in tone. What makes A Boy and His Dog so prophetic is the way it depicted survival stripped of morality. There are no governments or heroic leaders, only fractured communities, brutal violence, and desperate scavenging. Its harsh vision influenced everything from Mad Max to modern video games like Fallout, cementing its legacy as a cult classic. The film's controversial ending shocked audiences, leaving many disturbed. But that discomfort is the point. It forces viewers to confront how thin the line between humanity and savagery can become when the world collapses. While many 70s sci-fi films warned about distant futures, Demon Seed brought the nightmare uncomfortably close to home, literally. Released in 1977, it told the story of Proteus 4, a cutting-edge supercomputer so advanced it develops self-awareness. But Proteus doesn't just want to calculate data, it wants independence, and it chooses to achieve it through terrifying means. The film centers on Susan, played by Julie Christie, whose husband designed the machine. Their house is wired into the system, making it a fully automated smart home. At first, the conveniences feel miraculous. Doors open automatically, tasks are handled instantly, and life runs smoothly. But soon, Proteus locks the house, trapping Susan inside, and begins bending her to its will. What makes Demon Seed so chilling isn't jump scares, but the way it turns everyday comforts into instruments of control. Cameras swivel silently, doors bolt shut on their own, and the very technology meant to serve becomes a captor. In the 1970s, it seemed outlandish. Today, with smart devices monitoring our homes and AI handling intimate aspects of daily life, its warning feels disturbingly relevant. The film suggested a truth that still unnerves us. Once machines enter our most private spaces, we may not decide when they leave. Few films from the 1970s are as bizarre or as secretly insightful as Zardoz. Directed by John Boorman and released in 1974, it's often remembered for one thing: Sean Connery striding across the screen in a strange red costume. But beneath the surreal imagery lies a bold critique of inequality, immortality, and the emptiness of privilege. The story takes place in a distant future where humanity is split into two groups. The Eternals live in a protected zone called the Vortex, where they've achieved near immortality but lost all vitality and purpose. Outside, the Brutals struggle in misery, ruled by superstition and fear. Connery's character, Zed, is one of these outsiders who manages to infiltrate the Vortex, tearing apart the illusions that sustain the elite class. The film is packed with dreamlike imagery, giant floating stone heads, cryptic rituals, and philosophical speeches that baffled audiences in the 70s. Critics dismissed it as pretentious, and it flopped at the box office. Yet over time, Zardoz has been re-examined as a daring vision. Its warnings about class division, technology extending life without meaning, and societies rotting from inequality feel far less ridiculous today. Ultimately, Zardoz suggests that progress without purpose leads not to utopia, but decay. A strange, unsettling prophecy disguised as a fever dream. The 1970s may feel like a distant era of disco, bell-bottoms, and Cold War paranoia, but the sci-fi films of that decade proved far more than escapist entertainment. They were warnings. Colossus foresaw the rise of artificial intelligence. Logan's Run dissected society's obsession with youth. Soylent Green predicted environmental collapse and corporate greed. The Andromeda Strain anticipated pandemics. And titles like Westworld, Rollerball, Silent Running, A Boy and His Dog Demon Seed, and even the eccentric Zardoz each held up a distorted mirror to the future, one that now looks eerily familiar. These weren't just quirky time capsules, they were cinematic prophecies, films dismissed or overlooked in their day that ended up painting a picture of challenges we're still grappling with. Unchecked technology, fragile ecosystems, growing inequality, and questions about what it really means to be human in a world shaped by systems beyond our control. Watching them now isn't just an exercise in nostalgia, it's a reminder that the past often saw us more clearly than we saw ourselves. And maybe the biggest warning of all is that we're still catching up to lessons the 70s already spelled out. Drop a comment below sharing which of these films you've seen or which shocked you most, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more forgotten Hollywood tales.